So many of you asked me to do a galaxy painting tutorial, and here I have come up with a quick galaxy tutorial. I have already fixed my paper onto a base and I'm starting with applying a wet coat of water onto the paper. Make sure your paper is properly fixed onto the base before you proceed. To apply an even coat of water, I'm using this brush. This is by Princeton. Don't worry if you don't have a wash brush, you can use any of your bigger size brush to apply an even coat of water. So we applied a nice clean coat of water onto the entire paper. Now let's add paint onto the wet background. I'm using this size number 12 round brush by Princeton Heritage series. You can go with any of your bigger sized round brush. We'll be using wet on wet technique. I have chosen 3 different shades here. First, I'm going with violet. This one is from White Nights. You can go with any brand that you have got. Out of the 3 shades that I have chosen here, this one is the darkest color. I'll be applying this shade onto the top of the paper. Just drop in your paint onto the wet paper, whichever be the shade that you're using. As your background is already wet, it will nicely blend and spread into the background, so don't worry. Without any fear, just drop in the paint onto the wet paper. Now I'm washing that paint off from my brush. And we can go with our second shade, which is Quinacridone Violet, again from the brand White Nights. And I'm gonna again drop in this shade onto the wet background, just like how we did violet. Take enough of paint on your brush and just apply it closer to violet and also wherever you want it to be. You might have noticed I'm going with a darker tone of the shades because I won't be applying a different layer on top of this. I will be only going with one single layer. That is why I'm going with a much darker tone at the beginning itself. I'll just make this area a little lighter. Now after this, I'm going to go in with my third color, which is Quinacridone Rose, again from the brand White Nights. So these 3 shades which I'm using here is from the brand White Nights. Clean your brush properly before you go with the third shade. This one is a very bright, nice rose. I will be applying this onto the bottom part. So we painted the sky using wet on wet technique. You have to be a little quick and consistent when you are painting your sky using wet on wet technique. You have to apply your paint before the background layer dries. Otherwise, it won't be that easy to blend the colors. You can see I have deliberately left little of white gaps in between when I'm applying the paint. This will make your sky look like it is glowing. Now all you have to do is keep tilting your paper to all 4 sides so that all the colors blend and mix very well. The background is still wet, so if you want to make any of the areas more darker, you can do that now. I'm adding some darker tones of Quinacridone Violet over this area. Maybe I will make the violet also a little more darker on the top. I'm switching to violet. Just on the top, I will drop in some darker tones. You can see how nicely the colors have blended into each other. Now I'm going to tilt the paper to make the paint float into each other to create a nice effect. You can see how violet is floating down, leaving a nice pattern there. So if your background hasn't dried, make use of the time and keep tilting your paper to get the best result. So my background is kind of starting to dry, so there is no point in tilting the paper. It is not floating anymore. All of these colors have nicely spread into each other, leaving beautiful patterns in between. This is just because we kept tilting the paper in all directions that made the paint float and blend into each other. Our background has completely dried. Now let's splatter some stars onto the sky. To add the stars, I'm using white gouache. This one is by Artesa. If you don't have white gouache, you can always use your white watercolor. It is quite recently I started using gouache to splatter the stars. Earlier I was also using white watercolor. That also gives a similar kind of result. It is only that gouache colors are totally opaque and it won't fade out. I'm going to add a drop of water into this gouache paint I have taken on my palette. We need to work with a consistency which is somewhere in between thick and loose. It shouldn't be too loose. If your paint is too loose, you will end up getting big splatters which won't look like stars. Now I'm using another brush and I'm tapping on the smaller brush to create the splatters. If you are doubtful about the consistency of your paint, here is a trick. Take the paint on your brush and dab your brush on a paper towel 2 or 3 times. This will remove the excess water content on your brush and it will give you tiny splatters. When you do 2 or 3 galaxy paintings, you will automatically get an understanding about the consistency that you should be working with in order to get tiny stars. Let's try the technique one more time. I'm loading my brush with enough of white gouache paint. Then I'm gonna dab this brush on a paper towel to remove the excess amount of water. Just dab it on a paper towel. Now you can start splattering. So this will be the method that we'll be following. I don't want to spoil my black background. I'll splatter the stars and I'll come back. Alright, I have added enough of stars. Now to add in some bigger stars here and there, I'm using this white gel pen. And using this gel pen, I'm just dropping in some bigger stars at random areas. If you already have got bigger stars, you can skip this step. It is not really necessary. I have added enough of stars and I'm going with the last step, and for this I'm using black watercolor. This one is also from White Nights. Throughout the painting I used pant watercolor. If you want to go with tubed watercolor, that is absolutely fine. I'm using a size number 6 round brush, and using this brush I'm going to add enough of pine trees over to the bottom area. Go with any medium to smaller size round brush which has a nice tip. Start with a line, then add enough of foliage onto either side of the line. You can add very little of foliage on the top, and as you come down, make it more thicker and dense. I'm going with a taller tree right here. When you're adding your trees, make sure you don't draw all of them in the same height. Play with different heights. This will add a lot of character to your painting. If you are a beginner and if you are drawing a pine tree for the first time, it might be a little difficult for you. But then as you progress and when you do more paintings, it will be quite easy for you. All you need to do is add a line first, then take your brush and a dotted scribbly pattern and add your foliage onto either side. As you come down, make it more dense and thicker. On the top, you can make little gaps in between to make it look more realistic. If you are finding it difficult to draw pine trees, just add a mountain and finish off your painting. Anyway, next I'm planning to do a tutorial on how you can easily draw different kind of pine trees. I'll be focusing more on beginners. So if you have any questions or if you want any kind of tutorial from my side, please feel free to comment below so that I can have an understanding what all kind of videos you guys prefer. And with that, we have finished painting our purple night sky. We went in with a wet on wet technique and we used 3 shades for the sky: violet, quinacridone violet and quinacridone rose. We started by applying a wet coat of water onto the paper, then we dropped in some paint at different area, then we kept tilting the paper to make it mix and blend into each other. Give it a try, and if you have any doubts, feel free to drop your questions in the comment section. Thank you for watching and happy painting.